Hello, welcome to your classroom. I'm actually in your classroom. This is my Promethean board. That's my screensaver. I wanted to give you a tour of our classroom because that's going to go with the book that we are reading tonight. So I'm going to stop this and I'm going to switch our view and we're going to look around our classroom. I'm going to try to hold my camera pretty steady, but this is what your classroom looks like from my point of view. Those are our little, our table blockers. Here are our manipulatives. We're going to be using some of those next week. We've got the water cycle. Up here, we have a whole Cars bulletin board. Obviously, I like Disney. Here's your mailboxes. We have some microscopes, and there's the door for the next classroom. I love this. Ooh, I wish I could take a picture. That is really, really cool. So one of our mottos, you are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. And we are definitely going to do that, focus on that a lot this year. Here's our computers. We're going over to our cubbies. And here's what our cubbies look like. Here's our bookcase, and we've got our big Mickey Mouse just sitting in the corner. Welcome. That's our door. Here's where some more desks are. We're going to walk up to the front. We have a Mickey rug with our bucket for the balls, and here are all the books. These are my books. These are the ones that I pick from to read to you for our good night stories. And then we have some vocab, that's from last year. And we're coming right around to our Promethean board. And then we're going to look. Now my desk is kind of messy today, but what I want you to notice, here's where you see every day. But do you notice things right around here? I've got a refrigerator. I have a microwave. Oops, over there, I even have some slippers. So that is going to make sense when we read our story in just a second. All right, our book today is My Teacher Sleeps in School by Letty Weiss. What do you think? Do you think I sleep here? If you looked around my classroom, there might be some clues. Goodbye, called Mrs. Marsh. I'll see you all tomorrow. Mrs. Marsh went back into the school and everyone began walking home. I think the teacher sleeps in school, said Molly. I think she stays there all night long. What a silly idea, said Gary. Teachers don't sleep in school. Mrs. Marsh does, said Molly. She's always there when we come, and she's always there when we leave. I think the classroom is her house. Obviously, they weren't in lockdown, learning online. Why don't you ask her, dared Gary. I did once, said Molly, and she just laughed and laughed. But she didn't say yes or no. But where would she sleep, said Gary. Where would she eat? Let's look around the room for clues tomorrow, said Molly. Maybe we'll find out. The next day, Gary could hardly do his work. He kept watching Mrs. Marsh and wondering, what if it's really true? He whispered to Molly, what if she really lives here? Pretty soon, Lisa and Jason were wondering too. Where does she keep her clothes? Asked Jason. In the closet, of course, said Lisa, behind the paste and paper. At playtime, when Mrs. Marsh wasn't looking, they opened the closet door. Look, whispered Lisa, a towel and soap and a mirror, squealed Gary. I'll bet she gets dressed in this closet, said Molly. And undressed too, giggled Lisa. I'll bet she wears funny pajamas, said Gary. And gloppy cream on her face, said Jason. They pictured Mrs. Marsh in her pajamas and couldn't stop laughing. Next, they tiptoed over to the play kitchen. I saw her hide 2 bags here this morning, said Molly. More proof, said Gary in a loud whisper. It's paper plates and napkins and lots of forks and spoons. She must be having company. I see cake mix and eggs in this bag, whispered Lisa. She must be baking a real cake. I think she cooks her supper here every night, said Molly. That oven is only make-believe, said Jason. She can make it work, Molly said. Teachers can do anything. That's true. Then they thought about where Mrs. Marsh ate her supper and did her laundry and brushed her teeth before she went to bed. But where did she sleep? That was still a mystery. Maybe she sleeps on the bookshelf, suggested Gary. Or on the piano, said Molly. They looked and looked, but they couldn't find any clues. Then, after lunch, everyone was getting ready for an art project. When Mrs. Marsh was in the closet getting paper, Gary snooped around behind her desk. There's something under here, he whispered. Come and see. A pair of slippers, said Molly, and a pillow. She must sleep under her desk. We never thought of that. I told you so, said Gary. She really does sleep in school. Poor Mrs. Marsh, sighed Lisa. I bet it's lonely here at night. And creepy, said Jason. Then Molly had an idea. Let's leave her a good night snack, she said. And a nice note, said Jason. And something cuddly to sleep with, said Lisa. Gary had part of a sandwich left over from lunch. Jason had saved his 6 potato chips for later. Lisa got the teddy bear out of her cubby. Molly was in charge of the note. Surprise, she wrote. We know you sleep here. Good night. Sleep tight. Gary promised to keep everything a secret, but soon the whole class knew. Everyone started giggling and whispering. Mrs. Marsh looked puzzled. What is going on here today? She asked. But nobody answered. By 3 o'clock, Molly had wrapped up the goodnight package. Then Gary sneaked it under Mrs. Marsh's desk. The next day, everyone got to school early. They could hardly wait to hear what Mrs. Marsh would say. But all she said was, we're going on a mystery trip. And she wouldn't tell them where, not even a hint. Everyone got on the school bus. They rode and rode. At last they stopped at a white house with a blue door. This is where I live, announced Mrs. Marsh. Gary looked at Molly. Molly looked at Lisa. Lisa looked at Jason. Then they followed Mrs. Marsh inside. Mrs. Marsh showed them where she cooked her supper and did her laundry and brushed her teeth before she went to bed. And this, said Mrs. Marsh, is where I sleep. Every night? Asked Molly. Every night, said Mrs. Marsh. Then she showed them her children's rooms. You even have children? Asked Lisa. Yes, said Mrs. Marsh. They're in school all day just like you. When my husband and I get home from work, we're all together. Just like us? Said Molly. Now follow me, said Mrs. Marsh. I've saved the best for last. She led the class into the dining room. There were the paper plates and napkins from the shopping bag at school. I've been planning this special treat for the class, said Mrs. Marsh. Oh, said Molly, we thought. I know what you thought, Mrs. Marsh said, laughing. Then Mrs. Marsh brought out a big cake, and just like Molly's note, it said, surprise. I baked it last night. said Mrs. Marsh. "I baked it in my own oven, in my own kitchen, and after I went to sleep in my own real bed." Gary gave Molly a poke. "I knew it all the time," he bragged. "Teachers never sleep in school." Molly didn't even answer him. Mrs. Marsh was smiling at her in a special way. "Molly," she said, "would you help me cut the cake?" Mrs. Marsh served everyone a piece with a heart on it. And she saved the biggest heart for Molly. That is one of my favorite stories because I have seen students in Target and they're like, whoa. So it is kind of funny. But if you remember our look around our classroom, there are some things like refrigerators and things like that. So I hope you enjoyed our story tonight. Have a really good night's sleep.